Welcome to Soundbreaker. On today's episode, we're talking to Linnea Sundberg, who is the Chief of Staff. It sounds very serious. I like that, like the White House, Chief of Staff at UnitedMasters. Linnea, thank you for joining us today. And for our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and dive into some good topics today. I worked in various roles in the music industry for the past 10 to 15 years. First as an advisor, then as an operator, and now as an operator and an advisor. So excited to share some of my learnings over the years. I've tried to escape the music industry for quite a few times, I must admit, but it keeps pulling me back in. I'm sure you can share some similar stories. It's truly a
Yes.
love and
You
hate
sound like Al
relationship.
Pacino from the Godfather movie.
That's a compliment. I'm not sure I
Yes.
deserve that, but it is really exciting. Music really has so many different angles, and on the business side in particular. So curious to see where this conversation will go.
Absolutely. Yep. It's going to be extremely insightful. I'm 100% sure. I'm excited about it, actually. Linnea, I just want to go back a bit to your teenage years and what really got you motivated and kind of say, you know what, this is the path I want to take? What was the influence with your family or group, or you part of? It must have been something that kind of ignited, said, you know what, this is the path I want to take, and I know what I want to be in the music business.
I wish the answer was that easy.
It's
I
never
don't
is.
think I don't think I have a clear-cut answer there. I think I'm in music a little bit by luck and a little bit by chance, depending on the day, I suppose. But as many people, I started sort of, and still am, an avid music fan and would really love going to concerts and festivals. And then my professional career kind of placed me into looking at music and entertainment companies sort of from a more business perspective. And in that journey, I kind of realized that music wasn't just sort of a passion or something that you went to on your spare time, but really understanding how it worked could also be a profession. And that sort of really clicked to me early on as I started my career, and sort of I've doubled down on sort of that logic ever since.
You worked at Goldman Sachs. How did that shape your career in the media and the tech side of things?
Yeah, so there I really started understanding kind of the value of music. And I think this is a topic we'll kind of come back to over the conversation here in terms
Mhm.
of looking at the roles of the different actors in the music ecosystem. So, of course, front and center, seeing the artist and sort of understanding who composes or writes a song, but
Mhm.
then also seeing the other helping actors in the industry, whether it's a record label, a distribution company, someone sort of promoting or sort of providing marketing services, or kind of going into kind of the ticketing event space. So when I was at Goldman, again, it wasn't by choice. I think I got lucky. I'm not quite sure, but they put me in the tech and media team. So I very quickly started assisting and helping in the tech and media landscape. And at the time, I guess still, that was Shazam, SoundCloud, Spotify. I also worked on things around Disney and sort of movie financing, so I saw the broader media landscape. But very quickly got to know Spotify very closely, became sort of there like on that account, and then also with the connectivity that I have in terms of my background, I grew up, born and raised in Sweden. Swedish is my native language, but then sort of pursued my education abroad. So I sort of had this perfect kind of cultural fit and balance for the Spotify team. So started working extremely closely with them early on, and that sort of excelled my career into music. It was a
So
dream job for me. Go ahead.
I'm sure a lot of people's dream job to work at Spotify. So from graduating from Harvard, if I'm not mistaken, Harvard straight to Goldman, and Goldman to Spotify, correct?
I did my graduate degree in between. So Harvard to Oxford, Oxford to Goldman, Goldman to Spotify.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, and we spoke a little bit before in some of our
Oh yes, yes,
early kind of
yes,
conversation. And I think one of the things that you and I both share is thinking about how education really helps shape some of that thinking. And
100%.
the
Big
one thing I
advocate.
carry with me, yeah, that is definitely that Harvard taught me how to think. I
Yes.
don't know if they taught me that much more, maybe. We'll see.
But let's talk about your role when you started working at Spotify, and you led the business strategy for Spotify for artists. Let's talk about that. That's very intriguing.
Yeah, and it's interesting now of a couple months, 4 or 5 months, I've been at UnitedMasters, which is an artist platform based out of Brooklyn, New York. And a lot of the themes with the team that I see here really remind me of the early days when I was at Spotify. So a group of like really passionate individuals sort of coming together, avid music interests, and just trying to do things a little bit differently in favor of artists, in favor of innovation, in favor of growth. So in terms of kind of my experience at Spotify,
Hmm.
we were like, I think back of it fondly because I kind of said I grew up there, kind of joining quite early and staying for quite some time. But it was very much just sort of like, what else could we do? We had streaming success. This is about less than sort of 10 years into the business. And we sat on a lot of data and a lot of insights. And some of that insights we were using to sort of help our relationship with the big rights holders internally for product development, etc. But very quickly it became clear that by making some of this streaming data more publicly available, we could also help artists. So we started on a journey in which we were producing and productizing artist insights and sort of a little bit more in terms of audience segmentation that now is sort of the norm
Hmm.
with Spotify for Artists. And then we sort of were thinking, what else could we do? And this is where the Spotify for Artists sort of business strategy came in, because we had the ambition at the time with Spotify to be an even better partner towards
Hmm.
artists, provide them with even more effective tools. And we were looking around in the music industry, and what we saw wasn't super exciting. So we embarked on a journey to try to revolutionize, innovate, make better any type of things that were required
Hmm.
for an artist to be successful. And I really mean like all of it. Like we looked high and low. We looked from, I mean, an obvious start is sort of distribution. How do you get your music out there? Performance, how do you find your audience and cultivate your audience? But we also looked at like, how do you get a match with brands? Can we build a sync marketplace that kind of connects this to? So my role, which I've used many times now in sort of my explorations later, is sort of looking at kind of the overall music value chain and who acts in it, kind of what are they good at? Could there be room for improvement? What does that look like? Do people want it? Because frequently in the music industry, you can think about a lot of good ideas, but if
Hmm.
no one wants it, then it might fall flat. So kind of going through this exercise of time and time again, trying to launch something new together with our product team. And when by the time I left, that had grown into healthy business, and healthy business because it's helpful towards artists to allow artists more choice in the market to promote their releases, engage their fans, and also learn about how their content is performing on the platform.
I mean, I do think that Spotify really advocate for independent artists. A lot of artists say they don't. They only care about the bottom line, only major artists. But I really think, dive into the platform itself. They really do, But, I mean, it's not easy. They deal with so much data, so much music every day being uploaded. What is it, up to 100,000? Is it a week or a
Yeah,
day?
when I was there was around 40,000 tracks, and the latest stat I heard yesterday quoted here was 120,000. And I don't know if that's true or
Is
not.
that, are we
Um,
talking per day
per
or
day,
per
yeah.
day?
And
That's new
and again,
tracks, brand
I
new.
don't know if that's true or not, but it's just the point being that there is an overwhelming volume of new music being released every day. And then think about all the stuff that isn't finished, all the music
Yes,
that is kind of draft format that sort of lives on people's
correct.
computers.
But
But
also there's,
overall,
yes,
yeah, I
yes.
was just gonna say it's exciting because new music means that more people are making music.
I want to, before I jump into the next question, somebody who worked for one of the top or the top leading streaming platform, been in the business, highly educated, and, very, very knowledgeable. Let's say, what's next for the music business, you think, in your own opinion? Like, at first, there was the towers, the Virgins, the HMV, the Sam Goodies, and Coconuts, and all of these big major $1 billion or billions of dollars worth in each chain, brick and mortar. Then the digital world, the digital kind of technology came in, it became another world, and nothing stays forever. What, in your own opinion, the next wave of music consumption? Like, how would people get, you think? Everybody say, "Oh, Spotify is not going anywhere." Great, we love it. We're not taking it down, but it's part of evolution. It's part of it. Like, we all know that nothing, things will change.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like if you think about the medium, right, as you go through the history, like it does tend to change over time and how people's
Correct.
preferences on how they want to consume music. I do think that
Yes.
there will be the next inevitable version of that. I think less about that destination and more about who and sort of what, I suppose. And by what I mean by that is I've worked at a distribution platform. I worked in the production space. I've looked at working at the platforms. And those are more like the TikTok, Instagrams, etc.
Yeah.
But right now, where I'm really betting on and where I'm spending my time is working directly with artists because I think ultimately, like that is where innovation will happen, and it's platform agnostic. So it doesn't matter where you end up essentially putting what you create, but you're at the source of creation. And in addition to that, there's this there's a lot of noise in the market, as you know, around AI and is AI good, is AI bad, and a bunch of additional concern. Some rightfully so, some potentially like more fear based in terms of what happens next in music creation. But ultimately, I really do believe that inspiration, creativity, expression of this kind is a deeply human thing.
Correct.
And artists are the ones who are the best at it to invoke emotion and whatever it might be in the rest
Yeah.
of us. So I do believe that there is, if you say like, what's next? It's just like that is an inherently increasingly valuable skill to have. I find that I call myself creative at times, but ultimately, I mean, you said it, I started as a banker, you know, my skills are probably the ones that get eaten away first when it comes to analytical frameworks and stuff like that. So I'm really betting on the artist as the next sort of white collar worker and the sort of premium in the market simply because of the originality of the ideas. And that's
Hmm.
where I get really excited. And then I care less about where people go to find it. Someone's going to solve that. It's not me. I'm not working on it. And I'm excited to help put my artists' artifacts, whether it's songs or videos or whatever it might be, there.
Hmm.
But I'm really excited to see what it is.
Cool. Well, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Yes. I think it's more towards the experience this time, less about the platform. Well, it'll be some kind of a platform, definitely. I don't know if
What do
there'll
you
be
mean
that
by that?
many. The experience, meaning, I think TikTok, you said it a minute ago, gave us a
Yeah.
sample of the experience where people want users, fans. It doesn't matter how old you are, young or old, it don't matter. Age is only a number, but especially in that experience. And TikTok is an example, is a sample of where we going actually, because TikTok came in and it's creating your own experience, your own music, your own viral, whether it's obnoxious or funny, hilarious or serious or advisory thing, but it kind of gave that experience to put you in that mood. You created your own little world. And I think where we're going now, it's more of the adaptive again, based on the scenario, the situation, adaptive
Mm-hmm.
music, and the experience where the users or the fans, they are going to be the artists also. They're going to be involved with the artist. They're going to be simulating themselves part of the song, involved in it. I think there'll be a lot of that going on because the normal kind of just headphones or earbuds and just listening to music, that kind of it's fading away for the younger
Yeah.
generation. It's not enough fun for them. That's why the video games, it has that experiential where an adaptive kind of music. Always the video game business been ahead of the music business for very far, and now I think the music business is going that direction, and that's where the change is happening.
But what
Will be.
I mean, I don't know if this is might be putting like kind of like my interpretation of what you just said, but I think we agree in terms of having the artist be at the center and sort of driving that experience. I mean, you
Yeah.
see that right now in the creation in the AI space. There are artists who are essentially, I mean, Grimes was the first example, but there's been plenty since who are selling their name and likeness for interactivity with them,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
let you create with me. Here's my sample pack. Here's my stem
You know,
library. Here's my voice. Like make
correct.
something and show me. I
I
think
mean,
that it's like, and then it's less about listening to it. It's more about creating it.
Yeah, and technology to me is not a threat. It's just gonna create new opportunities that we never heard of. New opportunities, and that's why there's a whole barrage of entrepreneurs you call, or new creators of coming up with new ideas for in AI towards the music business. So it's not a. I always
Definitely.
say it's not gonna be a replacement. It's an enhancement. It's a tool. It just we have to use it wisely. I owned the studio many years ago. There was always every 6 months a new module with samples and sounds and beats. I mean, most of the people stopped making live music for many years ago. It's not like, but still, there is a space for everything. There's space for everything. It depends how to use it and how you look at it.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I would just say that the thing that we're still figuring out in this next wave. So let's say that streaming has
Yes.
potentially reached its maturity, maybe
Three to
not its
five years, I
end.
would say. 3 to 5 years, being
Yeah, well,
conservative.
I think in terms of, I mean less in terms of growth and footprint and more in
Yeah.
terms of thought leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that you sort of asked already about the next wave. So that thought leadership is somewhere else, right? Innovator's dilemma.
Hmm.
But then with that is sort of like business model. I don't think that the creator fund principles that some of these larger social platforms are trying to install is enough to go forward. So the never ending question is always creator monetization. How
Hmm.
do we
Yeah.
create the right value structure here to ensure that the people who make the valuable stuff to bring the audience get compensated in the right way? And it's not a capped creator fund with undisclosed economics.
Absolutely. I think in the end, artists going to make money from merchandising, what do you call it? Touring, live tours. That's always going to be important. Live human interaction. It's not going to disappear. That's what we live for.
Yeah.
And yes, yes. And endorsement deals. It depends on the artists themselves, obviously. Yeah.
You have to be very successful and do everything. This is why
Yes.
I'm sort of saying I'm thankful I'm on the business side. I've seen enough over the years now to just not
Yes.
envy and be extremely impressed
Well,
by
listen,
the artist and
you,
entrepreneur journey.
you have two things that's really valuable in any business: the brain and the creativity. So you have both. You're lucky.
Yeah.
Both are needed in this business we're in. Absolutely. Let's talk about your experience in the broader music industry space. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so after having kind of developed the product strategy and helped execute for a while at Spotify, I said that one of the key things I was doing was looking at new business opportunities and innovation in the market. So I wanted to try out and sort of broaden my experience a bit. So I went earlier, sort of pre-distribution, to the creation side and spent a bit of time at Splice and at some of the other creation startups, especially in the AI space, sort of looking at how can we make it easier to make music.
Hmm.
I believe it's one of the things we've talked about before. I believe music is a language, and if you can get more people to speak it, that's good for most people.
Yes.
You're depending on your taste, of course. But one of the things I realized quite quickly on the sort of creation side that I missed sort of looking at royalties and sort of the more kind of like traditional kind of recorded music, because there was just more, for lack of better words, action in that space. The market is a
Yeah.
little bit bigger. You have more room for innovation, especially in terms of the market size, etc. So after some time there, I took some advisory roles, sort of creeping myself back into the recorded space, and I found myself now at UnitedMasters, an artist sort of
Yes.
distribution, and I call it like a record label light offer. And again, just kind of like really looking at the whole landscape, being a business person in the music industry, having seen a lot of the value chain, I do believe that working closer to artists at their time where they're releasing music continues to be a really, really interesting opportunity. So that's where I'm spending time now to essentially try to and create this more fair system when it comes to kind of the record label experience for artists releasing music.
How do you see United Masters a bit different from other record labels or companies out there? I mean, you being actually the chief of staff there, I like to say that actually. I feel like I'm in the situation room at CNN, chief of staff.
That's right. That's right.
Yes,
It's
love
a
it. Love that
very
title. I
it's
love
a
it.
great
Actually, I really
title.
do. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It really it fits you. It really does. So yeah, let's talk about United Masters, please. And I know you talked about your role being, the chief of staff there and how involved you are and being on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, and so I also have corporate development and sort of business development and partnerships. So the way to look at it is sort of just like centralized operations, whether that's through an external lens with partnerships and sort of corporate development opportunities, or internally kind of running the quarterly planning process, ensuring that we're sort of marching towards the right point. And that's something that I also did at Spotify, to sort of be that kind of like flagpole or whatever you want to call it, like in terms of just like being able to sort of like calibrate any given time of sort of like how we're doing and what success looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And the chief of staff role, it sort of puts me right there with the executive team. I'm working directly with our CEO, but I'm also fundamentally an operator. So like it allows me to sort of be in the office, sort of sit with the team and sort of lend some of my previous operational experience to sort of look at where how we're doing things and if we could do it better. I think I said at the start of the call, one of the things that this organization reminds me of, although it's smaller than when I joined Spotify, it reminds me of that pivotal moment where we were sort of all getting together and sort of step changing, shifting gears and sort of getting into the next phase of our company's journey. And that's very much what UnitedMasters is too. And I found that that's a space where I'm effective in terms of just my operational experience and maybe my tone of voice. I'm not quite sure, but people listen.
Now, so pretty much you have two, I don't want to say two jobs, but two responsibilities. One,
Three.
working,
Uh,
three.
Biz
Well,
dev as well.
yes, United Masters, and then you hold an advisory role at Soundverse AI. What's Sound? Tell us about Soundverse for our viewers and listeners who might not be familiar with it. Tell us a bit
Yeah,
about Soundverse.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about my multiple jobs at United Masters, which is also something that I'm.
Well, that's another responsibility. Yes, yes. You do have quite a few hats you wear throughout the day, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of goes back to the intro you were sort of saying in terms of like music as a love hate relationship. I've tried to sort of streamline or sort of be potentially a little bit more narrow focus in my engagement, but I'm so excited about the music and the music industry that I keep finding companies and teams that do interesting things. And that I think is really, really motivating. And as a result, I've sort of taken on advisor capacity and sort of ongoing engagement with companies that I really believe in. And Soundverse is one of those. It's a company that is sort of comes out, the founder, there's two co-founders, but one kind of comes out of Spotify as a product manager. And then we have additional expertise from outside the music industry, but really like seeing early and doing kind of like getting early wins on how AI and sort of modeling can be used to improve or simplify music creation.
Hmm.
So they're a team that is really, really smart. Like they're just kind of, they're really fast to kind of bring their product to market too. And it's one of those rare opportunities where I can sit next to a team and share a little bit about what I know about the music industry and the do's and the don'ts to help accelerate their journey. And it's a really exciting group.
Let's say, how do you approach or advise media company? Because you speak in a lot of conferences about the future of the music business, which we really kind of talked about it in a bit, but our own personal opinion. But how do you take that role of speaking by advising other media companies?
Yeah, so the first in terms of team, right? We talked about it a little bit, like kind of
Hmm.
just like a team that I believe in at least, and then you find that out pretty quickly. And it doesn't need like what I mean is not specifically around like smarts or maybe experience, but it's also like kind of like interpersonal, like kind of like are you seeing things the same way, or can you talk about things using similar language, etc. So that's where when I look at companies that I could advise, I look for that kind of like meeting of the minds. And then in terms of the area, like is the problem worth solving? And like you can answer that in a couple of different ways. It's like something was done in a dated way, we can improve it. There is essentially a monetary difference in terms of a business opportunity if we do it differently, or this other business would work better if this problem was solved. But just really focusing in on something that's kind of a problem worth solving rather than something that would be a nice to have. One of the Spotify co-founders, I remember this distinctly, he would say that the value of a company is the collective problems that you've solved together. And I thought that was really nice because it kind of highlights this utility still in terms of what are we all trying to do together, and where are we going. And then when it comes to conferences, like, it's a lot of people want tips on how to get to the front, whatever the front means.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredibly difficult. You asked me sort of how I got started in the music industry, and I gave you a very roundabout answer in terms of luck and this and that. And I do think that it's kind of like not a straightforward journey, and it's quite cumbersome for some. And like, that's not the answer that people at conferences are looking for, because they're like, yes, but give me, where's the back door? So kind of coaching people through that and how to approach sort of what they think success ought to be for them, I think is one of the key things I focus on, especially when it comes to panels with artists or sort of people just getting started, producers, etc. Just like really, really kind of making sure of like becoming a superstar is a answer, but it's probably not the full answer. What does that mean? Why do you want to do it? Da, 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 da. Breaking it down into more tangible pieces, I think is more helpful in order to not get overwhelmed by some of the defeat along the way.
You just said something in the beginning of the conversation, the last conversation, things that are done in a dated way. What one thing you would like to see that's done in a dated way to be updated? One thing in the music
Publishing
industry.
royalties.
How?
Well, I think that the payment lag from stream to payouts of the actual songwriter is way too long and cumbersome. So simplicity in terms of how that takes place, and duration in terms of making it happen faster. And if you had that, then you would unlock a lot of payments that are sort of sitting on shelves for anywhere between 0 to 2 years. And you would let a lot of people reinvest that in creative ways to further their journey and their career. And I think we would see a lot of really, really cool stuff happening.
You would say there's billions of dollars just sitting there for publishing money, not
I
going
don't know
anywhere.
the dollar value offhand, but I do know that it could be up to 2 years before someone gets paid, and in certain instances you even have to claim it yourself, right, in order to get your money out, and like stuff like that. It's just poorly communicated across the industry. So I do know that there's a lot of opportunity for dollars to meet the right pocket a lot faster.
Interesting. Well, you heard it first at Soundbreaker. Now, what is the story with your investment with the dematerialized? Dematerialized, yes. And what
Here's
makes it unique?
another. I'm surprised that I've talked about it. I'm surprised that you sniffed this one out. But it is an early bet that I made in digital fashion. And my joke to my friends was that I invested in a digital pants company. But the reality, and if you kind of like look at it a little bit more in terms of some of the principles that I've laid out here, it's like it's a team that I fundamentally believe in. So 2 female founders sort of came to me. This is probably 5 or so years ago, ahead of the time, and sort of said, hey, there's a market here for luxury brands to bring part of their collections online in a kind of auction-based format. So that was sort of before the NFT craze, and these are all sort of collectibles. So they are the current label NFT. And then consumer demand for that product has since sort of subsided, but they're trying to figure out how and where to take the collection next. And I just thought it was a very fun concept to invest in a team that I believed in and an idea that I thought was kind of funky at the time.
Interesting. I like it.
They're
I like
looking for
very
a product manager. If anyone is interested, you should send them my way and I can make an introduction.
Okay. Definitely, we'll do that. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I would love to hear more about it. Actually, I really do.
Maybe as a follow-up, I can get you some digital pants.
Yeah. Send me the pitch deck, please. Yeah, we are doing business on a podcast. You see, that's what happened. Yes, please email me. How do you keep updated? The latest trends and the creator economy of the music industry.
Yeah, I think this is a good question. I don't have a perfect answer. I think I read all the newsletters that everyone else does in terms of the music industry press.
Mm-hmm.
paid and unpaid. And I try to attend conferences, as you mentioned. So the staple ones in terms of having understanding what other people are doing and sort of seeing my network. And then, frankly, what you have to do is just be kind of engaged and curious about what else is
Yes.
going on and make that your own thing. This is what you're doing here in terms of finding people to talk to, right? And it's like kind
Always.
of up to us a little bit. Yeah. So it's much energy as I have. I put it out to try to learn about more things in the market.
Amazing. You've been in the investment banking world for quite a while, and that kind of influenced a lot of the way you think and do things in the music industry.
Yes.
What's one thing kind of, I would say, kind of lift, and how should I say, lift an impression and stayed in you from the banking, investment banking days, and you apply it to this day into the music industry?
I would say the number one thing, and I think why I've had success in passing through my roles as I have, is understand your numbers. And this is harder to do than it is to say. I acknowledge that 100%. But especially in music, I wish that the business acumen or the understanding of sort of business outcome just was much better. It's very rare, I find, that you have someone sort of thinking holistically about value and
Hmm.
whatnot. And sadly, what happens then is that a lot of people get taken advantage of in not great ways.
Hmm.
I also know that music is not all about business, and a lot of very, very great people have told me this number of times because it is one of the few mediums where we can express emotion, foster connectivity, communicate joy, all the good things. So it's not just a business game. But I do think that if you know and if you invest in trying to understand the numbers,
Hmm.
you immediately put yourself way ahead of the pack, way ahead.
Good
Because most
advice.
people just want to have fun.
Yes, good, very good advice. Well, one more advice we need from you for our listeners and viewers. Once they watch this episode, they're going to be inspired by you, and some of them going to say, "You know what? I do want to follow the same path that you did."
Well, I mean, I think I already kind of alluded to like my kind of like that business logic. I do think that for a lot of people who might not be kind of like the creative or the artist themselves, but the team around it, just kind of really knowing and understanding your numbers and your choices and sort of doing the work, I think ultimately pays off way more than you ever would have thought. So if you don't know all the answers, ask, do the research, figure out your options, really try to understand what's the deal that I have in front of me here? What choices am I, what trade offs am I making? Because sadly, what does happen is the music industry is pretty small and everyone is trying to make their dinner. So trying to figure out how to create and make the fairest deal for what you're seeking. Again, like sometimes you can choose to maybe take less of a financial stake and more of a marketing commitment. On trade-offs and sort of like trades like that are definitely sometimes completely like with full merit and valuable, but just kind of going head into a conversation and sort of knowing that, I think will is the number one thing that will set you apart.
Amazing. Any new goals before we say goodbye for this insightful, inspiring interview for you for this year, for 2024? I know
Well,
2024 kind of coming to an end. We're in the we're entering the last quarter.
you spoke earlier about Spotify and sort of really being for independent artists. United
Yes.
Masters is betting on the future to be independent.
Hmm.
And I am really inspired by that vision. And we've had some success here that I'm learning about in a couple of genres, primarily in the sort of US hip hop rap space. I'm hoping to help advance that vision broader and including more music. So I'm preparing and sort of seeing where next up. I guess it's a little bit while away, but ADE in October to sort of talk about the state of independence there with that crew that I respect deeply and furthering the vision in terms of offering artists a viable path that is lucrative, sustainable, and exciting that they might not have imagined before. So that's where I'm working towards.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. And this concludes today's episode of Soundbreaker. Please make sure to follow us on socials and stay tuned for our next episodes. Thank you, and always be creative and think out of the box.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.